Good morning, friends. Welcome. A few announcements and then we'll have the talk. We have a message here from our friends in the Mumbai Lodge of United Lodge Theosophists. We send you fraternal greetings and best wishes on the forthcoming auspicious occasion of the anniversary of the Theosophical movement, which is November 17. Remembering that each student of Theosophy has a role to play in this movement. Light on the Path says, give your aid to the few strong hands that hold back the powers of darkness from obtaining complete victory. All of us who have joined the ULT have to accept this challenge and endeavor to establish a center of consciousness within us which will respond to this spiritual obligation. The Bombay Lodge will celebrate the occasion as well as its own anniversary, as also the anniversary of the magazine, the Theosophical Movement, by holding a special meeting on Sunday, November 11, 2018 at 6:15 p.m. That's about now, our time, with a talk on the Theosophical Movement. Our talk today is very related to three objects of the Theosophical Movement, and that's coming up in a little bit. And next week's talk is on gratitude, just before Thanksgiving. We in the United Lodge of Theosophists, Washington, D.C. area meet here 4865A Cordell Avenue, Bethesda, Maryland, 20814, every Sunday at 11 o'clock to study a particular topic, have a talk most of the time, and then we go out during the week and work on assimilating everything we have learned here and in our personal studies relative to Theosophy, which is the wisdom religion, which is a life to be lived. We follow the declaration of the ULT, which is on the back of our program. The policy of this lodge is independent devotion to the cause of Theosophy without professing attachment to any theosophical organization. It is loyal to the great founders of the Theosophical movement, but does not concern itself with dissensions or differences of individual opinion. The work it has on hand and the end it keeps in view are too absorbing and too lofty to leave it the time or inclination to take part in side issues. That work and that end is the dissemination of the fundamental principles of the philosophy of Theosophy and the exemplification and practice of those principles through a truer realization of the self, a profounder conviction of universal brotherhood. It holds that the unassailable basis for union among Theosophists, wherever and however situated, is similarity of aim, purpose, and teaching, and therefore has neither constitution, bylaws, nor officers. The soul bond between its associates being that basis. And it aims to disseminate this idea among Theosophists in the furtherance of unity. It regards as Theosophists all who are engaged in the true service of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, condition, or organization. And it welcomes to its association all those who are in accord with its declared purposes and who desire to fit themselves by study and otherwise to be the better able to help and teach others. The true Theosophist belongs to no cult or sect, yet belongs to each and all. The following is a form signed by associates who choose to do so of the United Lodge of Theosophists, being in sympathy with the purposes of this lodge as set forth in its declaration. I hereby record my desire to be enrolled as an associate, it being understood that such association calls for no obligation on my part other than that which I myself determine. Our reading today is from the Voice of the Silence on the two paths. There are two paths, the open and the secret path. Know, O beginner, that the open path, the way to selfish bliss, shunned by the Bodhisattvas, the secret heart, the Buddhas of compassion. To live to benefit mankind is the first step. To practice the 6 glorious virtues is the second. To don Nirmanakaya's humble robe is to forego eternal bliss for self, to help on man's salvation. To reach Nirvana's bliss, but to renounce it, is the supreme, the final step, the highest on renunciation's path. Know, O disciple, this is a secret path selected by the Buddhas of perfection who sacrificed the self to weaker selves. Yet, if the doctrine of the heart is too high-winged for thee, if thou needest help thyself and fearest to offer help to others, then, thou obstinate heart, be warned in time. Remain content with the eye doctrine of the law, and hope still. For if the secret path is unattainable this day, it is within the reach tomorrow. Learn that no efforts, not the smallest, whether in right or wrong direction, can vanish from the world of causes. Even wasted smoke remains not traceless. A harsh word uttered in past lives is not destroyed, but ever comes again. The pepper plant will not give birth to roses, and the sweet jasmine's silver star to thorn or thistle turn. Thou canst create this day thy chances for thy morrow. In the great journey, causes sown each hour bear each its harvest of effects. For rigid justice rules the world with mighty sweep of never-erring action. It brings to mortals lives of weal or woe, the karmic progeny of all our former thoughts and deeds. Take then as much as merit hath in store for thee, O thou of patient heart. Be of good cheer, and rest content with thy fate. Such is thy karma, the karma of the cycle of thy births, the destiny of those who, in their pain and sorrow, are born along with thee. Rejoice and weep from life to life, chained to thy previous actions. And now for today's talk.
Good morning and welcome, friends. Today's talk is on the 3 objects of the Theosophical movement. The first object of the Theosophical movement. When the parent Theosophical Society was formed in New York, USA in 1875 by H.P. Blavatsky, associated with William Quan Judge, H.S. Alcott, and others, it had 3 defined objects to which covered the field of its endeavor. The first object was then and is now to form the nucleus of a universal brotherhood of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, caste, or color. The desirability of such a brotherhood is not likely to be disputed by any, but that any attempt should be made in our day to form even a nucleus of universal brotherhood is generally regarded as so utopian as to be dismissed from the mind as altogether visionary. Even the sincere and earnest Theosophists who compose the various organizations have failed to grasp the vital importance of this first object, as their course has shown. Yet every Theosophist knows that the real founders of the Theosophical Society were masters of the Great Lodge, and should have realized that the objects of a society formed under their inspiration, if not directly by them, must of necessity have a deep and far-reaching meaning. There is probably not one amongst the thousands of Theosophists throughout the world who does not regret the lack of unity that exists. But how many have sought for the primal cause of it? Most have been content to assign minor causes, which in themselves were violations of the spirit and genius of the first object. This is not a latter-day development. It existed from the very first, and its disintegrating effects are cumulative and continuous. In the 14th year of the Theosophical Society, H.P.B. wrote, "If the Theosophical Society had accomplished great, one may almost say stupendous results on the exoteric and utilitarian plane, it had proved a dead failure on all those points which rank foremost among the objects of its original establishment. Thus, a universal brotherhood, or even a fraternity, one among many, it had descended to the level of those societies whose pretensions are great, but whose names are simply masks, nay, even shams. There never was that solidarity in the ranks of our society which would enable it to resist all external attacks, but also make it possible for greater, wider, and more tangible help to be given to all its members by those who are always ready to give help when we are fit to receive it. Masters can give but little assistance to a body not thoroughly united in purpose and feeling, and which breaks its first fundamental rule, universal brotherly love, without distinction of race, creed, color, or caste. No true Theosophist can read these words of the great teacher without feeling some measure of guilt for his or her part in it. The past wrong attitude has made the present conditions, and if it still held, perpetuates them. Yet the present holds the promise for the future, and it is our time for right thought and action. Much harm has been done in the past, is still being done, but it is not too late to mend our ways. Have we thought the first object was just an assemblage of words? An impossible ideal? If so, read these other words of H.P.B. You are not directed to found and realize a universal brotherhood, but to form the nucleus for one. For it is only when the nucleus is formed that the accumulations can begin and will end in future years. However, far in the formation of that body which we have in view. Has that nucleus been formed? Let no one answer from within the pale of any separative and separate organization, for the nucleus must be formed on quite a different basis. The first object, in fact, in its widest meaning, its fullest application. In other words, similarity of aim, purpose, and teaching. The aim is one to form the nucleus, setting aside everything that stands in the way of it, for they are in reality non-essentials. The purpose is one to study, apply, and promulgate the one teaching of the teachers on the lines laid down so clearly, leaving foolish speculations to those who would pass over it. What is at hand, and grasp it, what they can neither hold, understand, or use. Unity, study, and work. said William Corn Judge. By the first is meant the true brotherhood, which feels all the members as one's own self, to be neither criticized nor condemned, nor weighed in the balance of the mind, but to be helped to work each in his own way. A higher force is drawn upon. It seeks expression through channels open to it. The inner devotional and fraternal attitude is the opener of the sphere. Study what has been given by the teachers, those who began the Theosophical Society, together and work together until the day of death with one aim, one purpose, one teaching. Work, not only in study, but as they worked in every possible way to present Theosophy to a world sadly in need of it. When a student is able to do a little, he is too prone to think that little does not count, or because some are not able to do much, while others have not the will and energy to combat difficulties or circumstances or environment, they refrain from doing anything at all. The first class should remember that we are only expected to do what we can. The Chohan in his place and the atom in its place do what they can, no more. The law judges us by our opportunities only. The second class should remember that axiom of the voice of the silence. Inaction is a deed of mercy, becomes an action in a deadly sin. The student who will not do both kinds of work cannot advance. More, he retrogrades, for there is no standing still. And he is also a drag upon all the rest, just as an inactive organ is detrimental to the corporeal body. This does not apply to those whose limitations are real, but such should guard in their turn against the common error that right action is confined to the physical plane. They can greatly assist on the inner planes of the being by right thought, meditation, and the mental practice of true fraternity. Brotherhood is not a sentiment, it is not an emotion, nor yet it is so-called love. It is putting oneself mentally in the very place of another and realizing his difficulties while showing him that true compassion for which we should all hope. Mental exercise in this direction helps to develop that power of the manas, by means of which the adept projects his consciousness into that of the stone or any other object in nature. Analogy and correspondence are the surest guides to an understanding of Theosophy and the movement itself. Is there any standing between the three objects and the three fundamental propositions? The first proposition relates to the source of all, compassion, the absolute. The masters are the bridge. Does not the first object give us the cue and guide to them, as well as the practice which brings us closer? In the words of HPB, let us think, and in thinking try. The goal is worth every effort. We have an unassailable basis for unity. It will be our fault and responsibility if we do not avail ourselves of it. The second object, the study of ancient and modern religious philosophies and sciences, and demonstrate the importance of each study. On the inside front cover page of this magazine will be found each month the statement of the foundation of the three objects of the Theosophical Society. The contents of the magazines proper or any article in it are worthless as regards to the real end in view unless three objects are held constantly in the mind as the basis from which the articles are written, and from which consideration is to be given by the reader. But the society and its three objects are themselves worthless as regards to the real end in view, unless they are considered in relation to and in light of the three fundamental propositions of Theosophy. There is no action without an instrument. We have the oft-repeated statements by H.P. Blavatsky and William Quan Judge that the society was intended to be a vehicle for the conveyance of certain teachings to and from the benefit of the whole of humanity. Its real founders being the masters of wisdom, the elder brothers of humanity. These masters are interested in the welfare of humanity as a whole. They recognize no privilege or special gifts in any man save those won by his own ego through personal effort and merit. One of them wrote to Colonel Olcott, "We have no favorites nor affections for persons, but only for their good acts and humanity as a whole." The same master wrote to Mr. A.P. Sinnett these words, "You must be aware that the chief object of the Theosophical Society is not so much to gratify individual aspirations as to serve our fellow men. Yet you have ever discussed but to put down the idea of universal brotherhood, question its usefulness, and advise to remodel the Theosophical Society on the principle of a college for the special study of occultism. Again and again, it was stated that the society must prosper by moral worth and philosophy, not by phenomena. What is the moral worth but persistent, steadfast, devoted efforts in the self-sacrificing pursuit of the best means to lead our neighbor on the right path? What is the philosophy but those teachings of the Great Lodge imparted to the world by H.P.B. and William Quan Judge under the name of Theosophy, and which alone make true moral worth possible? Any sincere and earnest member in any of the now numerous Theosophical societies can ask and should ask himself how far his own motives and aspirations are in line with the ideals set by the masters, and how and to what extent the society with which he affiliates is true to the causative purpose and real object of the society formed under these auspices. Any thoughtful student can and should ask himself to what extent he has assimilated the fundamental propositions of Theosophy and applied them to his studies of the teachings of Helena Petrovna Blavatsky and William Quan Judge. In his efforts at living the life, in promulgating the Theosophy, in short, in his attempt to teach, preach, and above all practice Theosophy. These things are vital, for otherwise how is the devoted student to know whether the literature recommended and read in his society is or is not Theosophy? How is he to know whether his society is or is not true to the original purpose? Unless the student devotes himself to the study of Theosophy, he has no means of telling the counterfeit from the real teachings. Unless he assimilates the purpose of the real founders in inaugurating the Theosophical Society, he will be continually deceived by names, forms, and claims, the everlasting tools of the sham and the counterfeit. The failure, however, wherever it exists, whether in the student or society, is not in Theosophy, not in the masters, not in their purpose. It lies ever and always in the failure to study and assimilate the teachings given, in the failure to adhere to the program of the masters. If success is to be achieved by any individual or by any society, it must come not through the adulteration of the teachings, but through their assimilation. Not through the masters doing our work for us, but in our doing theirs. No individual need fail. No society need fail. All can fail and all will fail, just in that degree that they fail to study Theosophy, to adhere to the program of the masters, to follow the lines laid down. All, whether individuals or societies that have so far failed, can retrace their steps, can retrieve their position, by a return to the source and a presumption to work along original lines of the unity of aim, purpose, and teaching. These must be constantly borne in mind. But before they can be borne in mind, they must be born in mind and heart and brain. The masters have said that they have no secrets to impart to a select few. So, then the second object in the foundation must have its meaning, its purpose, and its lessons. But these cannot be found out or achieved if the mind has not ascended to the first object and been grounded and fortified in its arduous and uphill task through the study of Theosophy and work for humanity. The aim of the second object would then appear, in part, to be the leveling of the age-long barriers of race, creed, sex, caste, and color. For the study of the ancient and modern religions and philosophies and sciences, in the light of the fundamental proposition of Theosophy and the fundamental object of our society, would have the inevitability and infallibility show one source from whence have come the many religious systems of thought, however these may later have become polluted, adulterated, and overgrown with the rubbish of human invention and fancy. A brotherhood among all religions and philosophies and behind all differences, the brotherhood due to the identity of source. Source from which our philosophy emanates from. The difference is due to the weaknesses and frailties and follies of the earthly vehicles. All this would flow as naturally as the realization of the first object would flow from the study and clear comprehension of the three fundamentals, which show one source and law for all beings of every grade, a universal brotherhood of being due to identity of source, and all differences in being due to personal merit or demerit throughout the so far developed cycle of incarnation or necessity. The pursuit of the second object would have been a hopeless task for the majority of Western students if the founders of the society had not provided ways and means for their benefit and through them for the world at large. In Isis Unveiled, published by H.P. Blavatsky in 1877, attention was drawn to the philosophy, religion, arts, and sciences bequeathed to posterity by ancient India. In her secret doctrine, these were more specifically dealt with, as in many other articles from her pen. Well-known theosophists, and needing no special mention at this time. In America, the first Eastern work of importance to be placed in the hands of students was the Bhagavad Gita. A portion of the great epic poem of India was known as the Mahabharata. An early English translation of this work was made in 1785 by Mr. Charles Wilkins of the East India Company and published by him. This translation was revised and reprinted by Tukaram Tatya of Bombay, India in 1887, and remained for some time in general use amongst Theosophists, although it was poorly printed and had many blind renderings. In 1890, in order to meet the growing demand for a rendition which would be free of the defects of the Bombay edition, Mr. William Quan Judge, one of the original founders of the Theosophical Society, undertook the task, making a careful comparison of all existing editions and a complete retranslation from the original wherever any obscurity or omission was evident in the various renderings consulted. This edition remains to this day the clearest and most readily comprehensible of any. In 1889, Mr. Judge published an interpretation of the Yoga Aphorisms of Patanjali, a book of the highest value to advanced students. In February 1891, he established the Oriental Department of the Theosophical Society, American section, in furtherance of the second object. Pamphlets were issued monthly containing valuable translations, many of these from the Upanishads, a very ancient embodiment of writings dealing with the origin of the universe, with all being, the true relation of spirit and matter, the universality of mind, and the nature of the human soul and ego. All through the Path magazine, edited by Mr. Judge, are to be found translations and references to the wisdom of ancient India. His work and that of H.P. Blavatsky were contemporaneous and complementary. They gave the direction to proper study and clearly indicated the purest and best Eastern works extent. Although their efforts had been followed by an inroad of Hindu and other religious teachers, it never was intended by them that the minds of the West should be turned to modern India or the East with its exoteric, sectarian teachers, its peculiar and different religions, its hidebound castes, rites, ceremonies, superstitions, but to the archaic wisdom, the fountain from which all the great world religions sprung in their origin of purity, but which have become corrupted and encrusted with error through centuries of human selfishness and ignorance. No new knowledge can be imparted to humanity without affording a wider range of activity for those who are evilly disposed, and as selfish bigotry, spiritual blindness, and superstition still prevail among men, it is not to be wondered that the false is taken for the true and the true for the false. Had the warnings and advice of the original teachers of Theosophy been heeded, much of this might have been avoided, for there then would have existed a strong corrective in the form of a united body of Theosophists, whose unbroken front and unassailable motto, "There is no religion higher than truth," would have caught the attention of many thousands now entangled in the hopeless maze of Eastern errors, the karmic inheritance of those who asked, received, and failed to give. Finally, the third object, the investigation of the unexplained laws of nature and the physical and the psychical powers latent in man. The mistake has been made by many of assuming that investigation means experimentation. Investigation belongs properly to the study of the known laws and powers, for it is only when the student has thoroughly mastered the theory or science as given that he can wisely or safely begin to experiment. As H.P. Blavatsky, the one to whom we are indebted for Theosophy, has written, what we have to do is to seek to obtain knowledge of all the laws of nature, to encourage the study of those laws least understood by modern people, the so-called occult sciences, based on the true knowledge of nature, instead of, as at present, on superstitious beliefs based on blind faith and authority. Many have broken away from the theological conceptions that have prevailed for so many centuries, only to drift into an acceptance of the authority of a materialistic science. Others, again, while holding to one, are unconsciously colored by the other, so that it may be said that the general basis of thought and action among Western peoples is founded upon a curious admixture of both, with the tendency in the direction of the material. It must be apparent then that a true knowledge of nature is necessary before any right effort can be made in the direction of the third object. Theosophy, which embodies a record of the laws that govern the evolution of man and nature, has to be studied, assimilated, and applied to daily life before the student is in position or condition to understand and apply the more recondite laws of the science. To understand and apply the more recondite laws of the science, a grasp of the whole theory is wise and necessary, but practice should begin in our everyday relations, considered in the light of our real nature. And as this course is followed, the inner nature and perceptions are afforded fuller and freer range of action. This course has not been thought of much, nor greatly followed, yet all the great teachers of the past, as well as Theosophy, inculcate it. Its neglect has been the cause of all the failures, both inside of theosophical organizations and outside of them. And the reason for this is very apparent. Action follows thought, and thought based upon the personal idea, be that high or low, is separative and disintegrating. With these considerations in mind, what is to be said of those who make claims to the possession of occult powers, who advertise themselves as adepts, initiates, and whatnot, or who circulate prospectuses of schools of occultism, or claim to be magi, Rosicrucians, etc. An examination of the so-called instructions of those at present in existence shows much copying and rearrangement of matter accessible to anyone, and claims to which have no basis in fact and cannot be substantiated. That the mystically inclined should increase in numbers as the years went on, as well known to the founders of the Theosophical movement, the promulgation of a true, all-inclusive philosophy of life under the name of Theosophy was undertaken in order to meet this need, among others. That this has not been more generally availed of is not the fault of the founders of their philosophy, but is chargeable to the general ignorance and credulity of humanity, and to the stupidity or ambition of individuals who saw an opportunity to exploit or to obtain permanence over their fellow men. Fortunately for the world, the founders of the Theosophical movement left a record of Theosophy, pure and simple, and all necessary directions for its study and application in such form as to be accessible to any who desire it. There are those who follow this implicitly, and whose greatest desire and effort is that others may benefit as they have. Thank you for your attention. Any questions? Yes.
Do you think that we are we're advancing to a universal brotherhood in today's society all over the world, or we are like departing from that notion that unity, nucleus is what can...
I think that there has been a gradual evolution towards a unity of universal brotherhood. There have been attempts at it throughout the ages in the 20th century with communism and fascism and such, but on a personal level, it's hard to distinguish and tell. We've become a lot more selfish in our 21st century American life and more atomized, and
well, I think I'm hearing you talking about implicitly cycles too. They come and go, if you will. The larger cycle, we're moving toward it, I gather from your comment. But in these smaller cycles, it's kind of hard to see the larger cycle. Like right now, it seems like we're splintered all over the place.
yes.
We're falling apart, if you will. We might be coming together, but it looks like we're falling apart.
Yes, we're in the dark age, Kali Yuga. Yes.
Just a comment. The first object is unity study and work. And you said that we were not asked for a universal brotherhood establishment of it, but rather a nucleus of it. So the question that the student asked would be more relevant than to ask it of the students of this philosophy. Are they going towards unity? Are they understanding the importance of that first object of the movement? Because without it, the other two cannot possibly be established.
Right.
So, since the importance is based on unity, study, and work, are we doing that is the question. And what is our unity, study, and work based on? Aim, purpose, and teaching. But it seems like all over the world, people are choosing different aspects of the philosophy rather than staying with the original teachings.
Yes, there's a lot of picking and choosing what is convenient.
So it seems like these objects really, if we pay attention to them, we flush that out. We're talking about modern and ancient philosophies, religions, and so forth. If we did that, we would see differences between the modern and the ancient, and come to realize that the ancients really seem to have it more together, certainly had it together more than us today.
Yes.
And we would also, especially in science, where science really is based on the material side of nature, we come to realize that there is a universal whole that all these bits and pieces fit into, and as long as we recognize that universal whole, then all of these detailed experiments we're doing would have more meaning, it would seem like to me.
Yes.
And we would not go off on a tangent as much as we do these days.
It seems that since people have lost their faith in the exoteric religions, that science has taken its place as the leader of a universal theory of everything. So, yes.
Well, I think that's also dangerous, because if we have thrown out the dogma, then what are we replacing it with is the question here. Because if we don't have a moral and ethical basis for our actions, then how is that going to be useful in moving humanity forward? Because without philosophy to support our ethics, in which direction are we going?
Right.
And what is the philosophy to stay with? Why is it not sufficient, for instance, to stay with the original teachings where the truth is being revealed, learn it, assimilate it, and give it as we found it? Why is that not enough for the students, that they all go out and rewrite all these books according to their understanding, thinking that they're adding something to it? But from your talk, it's the one thing we ought not to do, is how it came across.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have to build a house, we have to have a proper foundation, and then we can build off of it. So the world can be properly construed as a place of objects in a materialistic scientific view, or a form for action, which is more of a mythological, occult view, and metaphysical view.
Yeah. So without this mind of ours opening itself to the possibility of the metaphysical world, which we talked about earlier when we discussed relative and absolute knowledge in the sense given in the secret doctrine, where we're told that everything that is physical is phenomenal and it's transitory because it changes. But in order to get to the truth behind the statements made in the secret doctrine and ISIS, we have to find the homogeneous, or the permanent aspect of that existence that gives rise to the phenomenal, which is also called archetypal in the secret doctrine, to understand it. And a lot of the students, I think, give up on the way. They reach some world, but I don't think it's the spiritual world. And so they go off on a tangent.
Mm.
But the skepticism is not where we need to be, because the 21st century, I think, is going in that direction.
Mm.
Even though there are a lot of pockets, if we look at humanity around the world, where a lot of beings are being awakened to true unity, to brotherhood, that we need to assist those that have less than we do and not hog the resources of the earth by giving ourselves rights that all and each human soul is entitled to the same privilege.
Yes.
And it's very promising to see that going around. Even kids are actually doing that kind of work.
Mm.
So perhaps there's hope for us.
I heard a statement or read it that religion unites but also divides. Do you agree with that statement?
Yes, I think that the original meaning of religion was to unite, but it can divide into sectarian sects, and it takes religion to make a good person do evil things. So that's the exoteric understanding of religion, and yeah, it's a difficult topic. Yes.
Can I add something to it? Perhaps it comes from that sectarianism, that each sector of whatever religion it is that we're discussing think that their philosophy is superior to the other philosophies. Rather than saying, okay, they have one part of the truth, however disfigured it is in this time, and the other religion has another part, and the other religion has a different part. So perhaps if we put all of them together, we would get a better idea as to what our forefathers were trying to tell us.
That would be
I think
Theosophy.
that would be really great to think that way, that one religion is not superior, but they're equal in a way that they promulgate or give forth a different aspect of the same truth. And if we looked at it that way, it would unite.
The analogy would be also the blind man touching the elephant's body, but in different parts and describing what they touched and felt.
Yeah, and thinking it's all different.
It's different. They said, no, this is it's like this.
The sum is greater than all of its separate parts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So as long as we are separatist, thinking that, okay, mine is superior to yours, I don't accept anything you're saying, or I don't give you any rights, that is definitely divisional. It will not unite humanity into one whole. And we need that unity very badly, because all different parts of the world is suffering in different ways. But
I think one area of study that unites all humans is consciousness. So if we delve into the study of consciousness, we can
The consciousness is really, from the broadest perspective, one, right?
Yeah.
And we all come up with different ideas of consciousness because it breaks down in the process. And I keep thinking about this word selfless, which sounds pretty straightforward, but how many of us are selfless all the time in our actions? How many of us try to go that route when we are bombarded with all the stuff around us, and we wind up taking selfish actions, which gets us into the trouble we're in now.
And we live in a society that values the individual and the self above.
Right.
It's like it's a divine principle of Western and American culture, is the sanctity of the individual.
Yeah.
So it's kind of important. That's,
Our forefathers founded this nation on the idealism that it would open tremendous vistas to all of the other parts of the world in showing or demonstrating democracy to the universe, and that we would be a center of giving light to the world, not a segregational nation who's closing its borders to the universe.
yes.
I don't know where that is going.
We have had talks here at the lodge about the occult origins of the United States and our founding fathers.
Yes,
We want to have those around July 4th.
All right. Next week's topic is
On gratitude.
on gratitude, and I hope you'll join us then. Thank you.